This is Miss Harden, and I'm going to explain how we're going to do this assignment with I Have a Dream speech. After you have read the speech with your teacher, Miss Gruno, or the sub, or your teacher, you're going to be assigned or select one sentence or phrase from the speech that you thought was particularly descriptive. It might use a metaphor, it might use a simile, it might use alliteration, allusion, anaphora, or it just has lots of juicy language in it that you think are interested. What you're ultimately going to do is you're going to take the picture in your mind that you have when you read that sentence, and you are going to create a detailed drawing, okay? Or create a collage of found images from the internet or a combination to create a visual that represents what is in your mental head when you hear that sentence. Okay? You're going to answer the questions. What does this sentence look like in your head? What kinds of actions, objects? What does it make you think or feel? What does this look like? So essentially, you're going to try and make what's happening in your mind visible on paper, either physical paper or digital paper. After you have drawn that, you're going to write 3 to 5 sentences explaining your image. How does what you created impact the meaning of the speech? In other words, how does what's in your head help you understand Martin Luther King Jr.'s ideas better? So here's the example I have. The Negro, which is an old-fashioned word for a black person that we don't really use today. Negro is sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. So in this sentence, words that stand out to me are the old-fashioned word of crippled, the word manacles, segregation, and chains. When I hear the word crippled, even though it's not a word we really use, again, it's an old-fashioned word for maybe being unable to do something or having some sort of physical disability, I imagine someone in my head who can't maybe walk straight up or can't physically do something because they are held back in some way. A manacle is like a handcuff. It's an old-fashioned word for handcuff. And that, of course, relates to chain, which, of course, are used to restrain things. When we have words like segregation, that was the practice of separating people based on their race, either legally or illegally. When I look at all of these things, okay, when I go back, when I go back and look at these, I notice that we have some metaphors, that they're crippled by the manacles of segregation. They're probably not literally being handcuffed or the chains of discrimination. Again, they're probably not literally, discrimination isn't literally a chain and segregation isn't literally a handcuff. But I do get that image in my mind of someone who is held back because of segregation or discrimination, just like someone is held back with a handcuff or a chain. So when I created my image, I found pictures, and actually, even though I know that segregation isn't really a handcuff and discrimination isn't really a chain, I do want to point out that these things were used. So I found images of people being chained during civil rights demonstrations. I found images of police handcuffing people of color, right, holding them back with handcuffs. I also thought of it more figuratively, not literally. I thought about in segregation how when people were trying to desegregate schools, people were discriminating through their voices and their actions. And I also thought about it in terms of economic progress, being held back because of segregation, so you can't actually get the jobs and opportunities that you want. So then I had my written response, in which I use my words to explain my thinking of why I put it on the page. So here's my response. This image represents the metaphor, quote, "The Negro is sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. First, a manacle is a type of handcuff used to restrain people, and segregation is the practice of separating people from rights and services and places because of their identity. Manacles of segregation makes me think that segregation is holding Black people back and restraining them. This makes me imagine people being handcuffed and arrested, but it also makes me think of people being held back in jobs and other opportunities because of segregation. By connecting segregation with the symbol of a manacle or handcuff, it makes people think of all the ways that segregation works to hold back or restrain Black people. So that is your task, is that you are going to take one line from the speech, either one that you chose or one that we give you, and you are going to create your image that represents your mental image of that line, of that metaphor, that illusion. And then when you're done creating that image, you're going to write a response explaining how that image relates to what you read in the speech, and then how does that actually help Martin Luther King Jr. convey his point of view. If you get stuck, there are resources in 311 in Canvas. So there is a glossary of banking terms that are used. There is a glossary of some references to the Bible that he uses. And then I also have a link to Sentence Starter. So if you don't know how to start your writing, I have examples right there for you. Thank you.